we already checked the computers, you know, because on main stage we had some technical difficulties. So again, it will be about computational design, Dynamo for Civil 3D. And in fact, I will state at the very beginning, it's a pretty new one, you know. So we released this Dynamo for Civil like this spring. Come in. It's empty. Space here. We released it this spring with 2020 release, and in fact is, let's say, in development stage. I don't want to say that what is available now is not finished. It is finished, but it has some limited functionality, and we want to extend this, and I will cover it later on. So, but at the beginning, let's talk about computational design. So, with the computational design, the goal is to really automate some tasks, you know. So, of course, not doing some sketches like here, but really create objects which you can work with later on during other project phases, you know. And in fact, I will start with something like this. Each mathematical equation can be described as an equation. A equals 4, B equals 1, A minus B equals C. But this is, let's say, standard mathematics. However, in computational design, we are talking about function. Function of A and B. So in this case, and if we are talking about 3D, then you have two different objects, and if you subtract these two different objects, then you have something like this. Just this is something to start with, to understand what computational design is. Yeah? And if we are talking about Dynamo for Civil 3D, it's based on visual programming. So, in old way, you have scripting. Basically, if you want to write some program, you have to be knowledgeable about scripting, which in case of Dynamo is not really the truth, you know. So this is something which I call basically programmer skill, you know, really to know about the commands, you know, functions, being able to write everything, you know, debug it, and so on and so forth. And this is something which is not required as a knowledge for Civil 3D, let's say Dynamo for Civil 3D. What we are talking is visual programming, and this is why I started as a minus b equals c and involving as a function, because if you think about this, you have as an input value a, you have as an input value b, and you can create function f from these inputs a and b. And then what we are doing, in fact, you are having, and you see it here in a smaller scale, you have some what we call nodes, which are predefined, and then from these nodes you are creating function, and you are just these input parameters, you are connecting this function with what we call strings. So this is the idea how this visual programming is working, and this is why you don't need to have this scripting knowledge that you would have to type something, because this is something which is embedded in these available nodes, because here you have these nodes, and then just using drag and drop you are creating this script, and then you can run it. So far so good. Makes sense? Good. So if we are talking about Dynamo, which is our tool for visual programming, in fact, if you look to, let's say, the tree or how it can be developed, of course, at the beginning you have just pen and paper, pen and pencil, and then you can do something. Or you have interactive tool which is Dynamo, Civil 3D at this point, where you can really interactively design something and make some kind of repetitive task, change something and do something. While Dynamo is hanging a little bit higher. And this is still kind of low-hanging fruit, I would say, you know. So this is something which can be used by people, can be used by engineer. On the other hand, honestly, I don't expect that each and every engineer within company will be familiar with the Dynamo, with the script, with this visual programming. Yeah. So sometimes I am saying it's kind of similar like Lisp in past. In past also, if you have some AutoCAD, you have some Lisp routine, so somebody has to write it. Of course, he knows how to do this. But then you have just consumers who are just consuming it. And this is similarly in Dynamo. Somebody will write it, and it can be you, somebody in your company, or it can be our partner who can help us, or it can be somebody else basically. And then you can just consume it, you can just use it, and you can create really nice stuff out of it. Yeah? And at this point, there are already several products where we can work with Dynamo with. You know, so originally we started with Revit, so basically we connected Dynamo with Revit, and honestly I don't remember exactly how it was, then it was I believe Advanced Steel, then it was Formate, then Alias, then we connected with Civil 3D, and these are already, let's say, official releases which you can work with. And then we are at this point connecting this sandbox basically with InfraWorks. But it's really in the development stage. So basically now availability of Dynamo is with these 6 products. And what is important to say is that Dynamo is, let's say, part of these products, you know, so you don't have to pay anything for either writing scripts in Dynamo or using Dynamo script within these products. Any question here? No? So still some available seats. So let's have a look for the Dynamo workflows, how it can work. So just kind of high-level workflow, how it can work, you know. So basically, you can select the objects, basically have some input parameters, then you can get from these objects some information, some properties, and you can write, and then you can take this information and you can write it out to some for example, Excel sheet. This is one of the examples what you can do. Or you can select objects, you can read from outside some input information, and you can modify, for example, object information, object properties. Yeah? It's another example what you can do with Dynamo. And the third workflow is you can input some data, you can process this data, and you can either create or update what is already existing, which is something which is maybe the maybe most common thing, because you want to create some new objects, so you want to create something. So basically these are 3 high-level workflows which you can do with Dynamo at this point. So let's have a look how Dynamo for Civil 3D looks like. So we do have new, within ribbons, we have one new tab which is Dynamo, and you can run Dynamo scripts. So basically it appears in Civil 3D 20.1, because I told you that this is something which we released, let's say, recently in spring of this year. So another important thing, you are not able to use Dynamo for previous versions of Civil 3D. Must be only new one. Yeah, and honestly, we are not going to change it. You know, so if you want to use Dynamo, you have to go to the new release of Civil 3D, and of course you can update from your account manager, can download it, and you can use it. And in fact, this out of box, we are supplying you with 9 sample workflows. Basically, this Dynamo script which you can start to use. You can look at it, you know, and you can learn how they are written and what they are doing. So, because Civil 3D is based on AutoCAD, so there is obviously also Dynamo for AutoCAD, and here is how it's structured, you know. So if you think about programming, and for those who already did some programming with AutoCAD or some other Autodesk products, so I apologize because I go to some, let's say, pretty generic details. But in fact, we are talking about AutoCAD document. Basically, you have to first access the WG file, which is in fact AutoCAD documents, and then you can work with layers, model space, paper space, line types, you know, and then you can work with a selection, and you can select different objects by layer, object types, blah blah blah. You know, all this kind of stuff you can do, and you can do it programmatically within the Dynamo. And here are the objects within the model which you can work with. Yeah. So, and it is in AutoCAD. Yes, it is in AutoCAD. So, and this is also available in Civil 3D, of course, because Civil 3D is based on AutoCAD. And if we are talking about Dynamo for Civil, then we have, of course, you have to access again AutoCAD document, because this is a WG file, and then you can work with alignments. And this is something which I want to state right now, and I was talking about this at the very beginning. We don't have access at this point to each and every object of Civil 3D, but we are planning to do this. And by the way, this is already obsolete slide, because last week we released a new release of 20.2, you know, release, where we have access to the new objects of and to another not to new, but sorry, to the different objects of Civil 3D, you know. So for example, here is not mentioned surface. Now with new release we can also, I could put here another leg, you know. We can access surface, we can access Kogo points, and we can access also property sets, you know. So basically now we can do more, and this is our plan with each release to give you possibility to consume more functionality. So what I would say, please stay on track, you know, stay with us and check what new is available and what else we can do with our programs. So, but my example, which I'm gonna to show you today, are really related to these objects, and also to the objects related to AutoCAD. So this is what I'm gonna to show you. Again, makes sense? Good. So let's have a look how it can be used. You know, so what are the possibilities? How Dynamo can be used? And I have, let's say, 3 different use cases how Dynamo can be used, and I will start with Rail. So in Rail, of course, you can create alignment, profile, you can create corridors, so on and so forth. But what about elements like sleepers or ties, you know? So basically, what about these objects which are along alignment, along the corridor basically, but they are kind of discrete, they are in regular interval, and this you in fact can put manually, of course, but it really doesn't make too much sense to put each and every tie manually. Another example can be pole. Basically for overhead cables, it's discrete element in some interval. Here you have two C's, please. So basically what you can do is you can place these objects in some regular interval, but again you should do it along the geometry, because system should know where is alignment, where is profile, where is surface, and to put it along this. So this is another example how it can be done, because in Civil 3D you can just predefine, I believe, as you know, you can predefine typical cross-section, basically assembly, and you can run it along the alignment and profile to create corridor. But for these discrete elements, you don't have really, let's say, some good automated way how to put it. And as I said, example is this concrete ties, which you want to put along alignment and profile. And if you think how to approach it, so how you can do this, and please don't expect that right now I will jump into the Dynamo and I will start to type something, because it will be, too much. I just want to really give you idea what we can do and how to do this. So, if you think about at the beginning, what you can do is to get these input parameters. So, basically, what you can get is you can get corridor feature lines. Because if you want to make these ties, of course, you need to know where the rail track is going, but also what the cant is. So basically, what is the cant, or maybe say super elevation, of the rail track. So this is something which you need. And of course, for this you need corridor baseline and point continuum. Basically, you have to know which feature line you are talking about. Yeah. Then you need to calculate coordinates, because then if I want to place the tie, so I need to know coordinates along this, and I need to know what will be the swing of these ties. So and then of course I should put the information like what is the space between the ties, what is the pacing of the ties, and then system can calculate, or you will give information how to calculate location and rotation of these ties, and then you can place, and in fact you will be placing block along the design. So at the end of the day, this is in fact example how you are getting information from Civil 3D objects for making calculation, but then you are adding AutoCAD blocks, AutoCAD information. And kind of similar, if you want to make an overhead cable system, it's kind of similar, because these are the discrete information, and you want to place it to the system. So, if you think about here, this example, this is not something which maybe it's some regular interval, maybe not. So basically, here first you will get information about the corridor. So basically you need to know where your corridor is, what is the profile, so you will get the baseline. But then you have possibility maybe to read Excel sheet, CSV file that will be written where are these locations, in which station interval you want to put it. Yeah, there can be also written how far it will be from central line. So basically all this information you can get from this, let's say, external file. Or another example is that you will write it into the Dynamo, so that there is this value, this value, this value. But we take it as two possible inputs. Me personally, I would prefer CSV file, because I can retype it very quickly and rerun it, so it's much faster. And also think why I would prefer such solution, because then for the consumer it's just much easier, because one guy wrote this, will write this Dynamo script, and then another one will be consuming it. So this one who is just consuming it, he doesn't need to know the information what is inside. He will just retype something in CSV file and he will work with this. And so then you will calculate coordinate system, or you will let system to calculate coordinate system. You will calculate rotation, and you will insert the blocks and so on and so forth. And this is the same for overhang cables, you know. So I just what I want to give you is information that this stuff you have to think. You are not writing really the code, but of course you should have the way of thinking how system is working and to put information along the design. So, and here is the way how the result can look like, and here is the process how it can look like. So basically you will run the Dynamo script where you have already these different nodes which are connected with strings, and you can interconnect it, and then on the run, so system will create all these ties. Here is example of Excel sheet which you will read, because you will type your string from which you will read this information, and now you can run it along this rail track, and then system can even place. And of course, level of details depends at this point on the level of detail of the block. You know, so this is not rocket science. If you have nice block, you will have nice results. If you have just some simple block, not so nice maybe. And of course, just why you should put it. You know, because if you are talking about ties, of course, then you want to make some cable duct. And you need to design the cable duct standard way of as you are doing it in Civil 3D, but then you can place exactly in between ties how it will look like. Then in the road is kind of very similar situation, you know. So I will speed that a little bit because it's a repetitive task, you know. So again, you have some discrete information along the road, like lamp, traffic sign, or a barrier. But in assembly you can't do this, you know. So you can create, for example, in retaining wall, in elements of retaining wall, and again the same idea. You have to read information from corridor, what is the block, and then you can run it along the design to get this information. For a road barrier, again, it's in some interval. You have the height, you have the starting point, ending point. So again, you can write some, let's say, flow chart, what you need to get out of it, and the result can be like this, you know. So again, you can run a script, so where you will connect these strings together, and at the end of the day, if you run it, system will create automatically this basically retaining wall or barrier, you know, along the design. So something which would be really difficult and time-consuming to create. And the last example is site development, where if you think what to automate is, for example, these ramps, because these ramps, they have to be designed. You can do it in Civil 3D, but you know, it's kind of a tedious job. But with Dynamo, you can do this because you know the location where it is. Basically, you know the station in which location you want to place these ramps, and this can be again written in some Excel sheet. And then you can read the alignment and profile, basically the corridor. You can put line work, and then it can go along this. Another example is that you can go to point labels and report. Basically, you can write your own report out of the Civil 3D using Dynamo. Basically, that you are able to get information along your design from, for example, surface. And here is example what you can do with these ramps. Again, this is something which you can define, you know, what is the location, here is the location, what I just changed, what is the size of this ramp, and then hitting run. So system will create these ramps along this design. Or you can just read this information from Excel sheet, and you can run this, and then system will automatically place these ramps based again on Excel sheet where the location is and where it should be, and then system will do everything automatically because it will place this line work, it will attach it to the surface, and it will create it. And the last one is report, you know, so where you can get information out of your design to some Excel sheet, you know, where you can get really information automatically reading. Or you can maybe write some labels to your design. So then it can be really something which you can do and you can automate this. So, and the last one, next steps, as I said, you know, this is something which is living, or I would call it in progress, because we want to populate more and more stuff. So I would encourage you to go to forum Dynamo bim.com/c/civil3d, where you know there is a lot of information, because it's forum. It's people are putting there some ideas. Some people are even sharing their codes, and I would encourage you to go there to learn more about Dynamo for Civil 3D. And as it's written here, please walk with us, you know, so walk along the path. It will be ongoing journey, and I wish you to really find as much as possible. And this is something where we want to go with next releases, you know, where we want to add more information or extract more information from Civil 3D. So, with that, and so I'm kind of on time.
Yes, don't worry.